This video is brought to you by Sporlan, quality, integrity, and tradition. Alright, we got an R-290 cooler that's not working on the top or the bottom, so we're going to open up the back. This is a Delfield cooler and see what we find. So their complaint is that they're not getting cooling on the top or the bottom. Evaporator fan motor's running. But we don't have a light on right here, which indicates that the rail is not calling. Still taking the screws off the back, and when I pulled this screw out, all of a sudden the compressor started running. So again, paying attention to our surroundings, that could be something going on there. And the compressor turned off again. So got access to the back, so we have a defrost timer that turns off the rail. It's just an off cycle timer. And this particular customer is not set correctly, so it should be set from 12 until 8 a.m. And currently right now it is 8:43, so I think the time's fine because we had a time change. Now the particular OEM time clock has a built-in battery backup, so it should never not have the right time. I believe the backup holds for 150 hours, I think, or something. So that should always be holding the correct time, but we did just have time change where you spring forward. So it's set about 7:45, so timer I think is working. I set it up correctly. Now the top is calling. The bottom's reading high temp, but still compressor's not turning on. Very common on these guys is for these pressure controls to be messed up. There we go, it just turned on. So let's see if it's a pressure control issue. These things are very problematic on these coolers, and it just keeps cycling off, so we need to go ahead and apply some service gauges. This is an R-290 system, so we'll get them on there and see what we can figure out. All right, I've got some stubbies here, but before we apply them, we're going to run the leak detector across everything. This is the R-290 detector. We're just waiting for it to zero out, and then as soon as that happens, then we'll run it across the connection ports right there where the shraders go, just in case. And then we'll do a quick evap leak check just to give us an idea before we apply gauges. The biggest thing is you want to make sure these aren't leaking before you disturb them and inadvertently fix the leak. So nothing there. Okay, so we can apply gauges now and then go from there. All right, now this guy's going off because I just applied the gauges, but check this out. We have 105, 108 PSI on the low side, and we're equalized on the high side. So we have refrigerant in this system. So something's going on here. So if I tap the pressure control, and it just started up again, let's see what happens. Does it seem like it's cooling, or does it pump down? Just watch it for a second. I mean, so far it seems like it's cooling. So I'm thinking that we have a faulty pressure control is what I'm thinking. Alright, so this guy right here is still running, and it's slowly coming down in temp. The pressures aren't too alarming to me, but I'm pretty confident this guy's the problem, because watch, it shuts off when I whack it, and it turns back on. So this pressure control is sticky. There's something going on in there for sure, but I'm still going to leak check the evaporator too, big picture kind of stuff. All right, so this is our pressure control right here, and what I did, I will never leave it running like this, but just to be thorough, I bypassed the pressure control temporarily, and we're going to watch the entire unit come down to temperature, because I want to see the whole thing come down to temp to make sure there's no more problems, so that way I can just order a pressure control and a liquid line dryer and potentially be done with it if it comes down to temp. So we're going to let it run here for about a half an hour or so, watch the whole box come down, and then we'll go from there. Alright, well, it's just about, the bottom's already satisfied. Well, it's just about to be satisfied, and then the top's almost there. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and order a new low pressure control and a dryer. unfortunately, I don't have one of those. The cruddy thing is one of my other technicians has one, but he's at the other end of the earth today. So, bottom just satisfied. You can see the snowflake went away on the controller. So now the top will start coming down turbocharged. Yeah, so this one's good, and I'm gonna wrap up the cord, put it in the box so that nobody can unplug it, and I'll cook it back up like it's supposed to be. That way someone doesn't get confused. But then still, we'll wrap up the cord so nobody can use it, and go from there. So I didn't find any leaks in the evaporator. The condenser is going to be hard for you to see, but it's back in here, and it's not very dirty at all, so I don't see a problem with that. So it's just a pressure control, very common on these Delfield units. Very interesting. This guy came up to 45 before it turned back on. It's set for 38. I wonder what that's about. That's interesting. I think it was actually just a program, because within 45 seconds it's already down to 38 degrees. So I think maybe that was just air temperature, and it probably uses coil temperature too. And maybe that was just like a weird programming thing where, because it cycles the evaporative fan motor. So the evap fan motor was off, it was satisfied. It came up to the temp where it was going to turn on, then the evap fan came on, and then the air temp went up to 45, but I think that was just because it was circulating. The coil temperature was probably still down, judging by how fast it came down to temp. But we're just about down to temp, so we got to be careful about this. I'm in a well-ventilated area. We're going to go ahead and vent this refrigerant. Oops, don't want to get that much going. Just a little bit. This is flammable, so you got to be careful. Make sure you're well ventilated. R-290 is legally allowed to be vented. Best case scenario, take it outside, but I don't want to introduce any moisture to the system because it's raining. So, all right. Looks like my gauge is a little bit out of calibration, but that's okay. We are open to atmosphere, so now we're going to take it back to where we're going to work. We're going to purge it with nitro and do the repairs we need to do. So the area that I'm working in is in a closet, like a hallway, far away, and it's not very well ventilated, so had to make sure that we vented the refrigerant outside in the main kitchen where all the exhaust fans are running. Always want to think about safety. So it is a must when you're working on R-290 that you purge the system for safety, okay? Now, because we don't have power, I had to open the solenoid valves manually. So I have the Parker Sporlan solenoid magnets here, put on both solenoid valves, so that way when I pressurize right here, and we'll give it a blast at first, okay? So this is going to be high pressure. It'll give it a sweep, and it's already coming out. And then we'll go ahead and turn it to braise. Now braise is going to be very low pressure, so that way you can actually braise while you're flowing. But it's really important because we're pushing the nitrogen softly through the system, and we're hoping to grab any pockets of flammable refrigerant vapor. This is R-290. It is unodorized, purified propane, okay? So even pushing with nitrogen, I bet you anything there'll still be pockets of flammable vapor when we're all done. So it's inevitable, okay? It happens. But you just want to let it flow the entire time, as much as possible. When it comes time to change the dryer, I'm going to have to take it off, you know? So, but that's how we're going to roll on this guy. So we're going to keep on going with the repair. All right, everything's installed and cooled off. Now, you know, I know a lot of people say that you want to cut these dryers out. Well, how are you going to cut that out? It's too close together. It's not practical cutting them out on these reach-in coolers. It's one thing if you have a lot of space, but you don't. You're limited for space and it's really difficult. I'm purging nitrogen, it's no big deal, okay? Releasing moisture, I'm not worried about it, but even if I was, I'm purging with nitrogen the entire time where it was flowing. So it's no big deal. So cooled it off, everything's installed. Pressure controls installed down there, no big deal. We're gonna get the vacuum pump out, pull a vacuum on this guy and get it charged up. All right, we're all ready. Micron gauge on, this guy's open. Solenoid magnets are still engaged. Let's go ahead and turn this guy on. So remember we were purging with nitrogen the whole time. So now, we're just gonna let it pull down. And again, we're doing a one hose pull. It's gonna take a little while because even though this is a really small system, the inside diameter of all these lines is super tiny, so it takes forever. I'd say at least probably 45 minutes to an hour to get this thing vacuumed down. So we'll update you when we get closer, but that's where we're at. Another thing to think about too when you're doing this is you always want to have these slightly closed, just ever so slightly, because there's a ball valve in there and sometimes air will get trapped around the ball. So if you just ever so slightly leave it open, you'll have less of a chance of a spike when you close them earlier. And actually this is moving a lot faster than I thought it was going to move. So we're already at 7,800 microns, but we're going to keep going and letting it pull down. Now another really important thing to understand is I never really let atmosphere enter the system because I immediately, after I vented the charge, put nitrogen on it and it was moving nitrogen. So in reality, we're more than likely just pulling the nitrogen and residual refrigerant vapor out of the system. We're getting there. Still, it kind of hit a brick wall when it hit about 1200. So again, it's going to take some time. Go take a break or something. It's nothing wrong. It just, the internal volume's just so small on these things. It just takes a bit. I'd advise that while you're waiting, just get everything ready. So I got my R-290 hooked up to the scale. I got it purged, so there's only liquid in that hose. We'll slightly crack that valve as we're putting it on the system. I've got core removal tools there. So, you know, I don't have to use normal gauges, but I have used normal gauges. I happen to have them right there. I have used them. It's not a big deal. You just have to know how to charge with it. But with these tiny little charging scales, it makes it really easy because they have these really small hoses with ball valves. They do a good job. This one's made by JB. It's a DS5000. Pretty good little guy. As you're doing your evacuation, this goes for any system, but especially on these small ones, what you can do, I was actually down to 800 microns and I agitated the compressor. So agitate the compressor and you'll see it climb. It went up to 1200 from 1100. It's because you're shaking the refrigerant vapor out of the oil as you're doing that. So you can do that to try to, you know, make the process go a little bit faster. So now we want to do our best to put only refrigerant in the system. So what I'm going to do is we'll zero this out after. Okay, so we see we have pressure here, but we need to purge it. Okay, just to make sure that it's refrigerant in there, and it is. Okay, so we're going in through the high side. We're looking for 150 grams on this guy. So we're going to go ahead and dump it in on the high side, and we're not going to open up the low side until there's pressure in there. Okay, so now it's flowing into the high side, and then what we can do is we can crack this, and it's slowly flowing. There it goes. We're positive pressure. There we go. We're just purging right there, and we're just working through looking for 150 grams. In this case, we're leaving the solenoid magnets on just to let as much refrigerant get into the system, and then we'll turn them off here in just a minute, and we control the refrigerant flow from this guy right here. So we've got pressure in high and low, and we're almost there to our 150. And we're just about there. There we go. 150 grams. Give or take a gram is fine because you are going to lose a little bit when you take your gauges off and different things. Even though I have ball valves, it shouldn't be as bad, but you're always going to lose a little bit. So taking the solenoid valves off, put it back on. I did mark these two, by the way, T and B, so that way I knew where they went, so I wouldn't get confused and have to trace the wires back. So we're going to get those put back on, then we'll get ready to plug it in. All right, we are plugged back in and ready to go. 1, 2, 3, please don't blow up. Compressor started up, and that's normal because we have pressure in the low and the high side because we had the solenoid valves open. Top cold rail is on. Okay, the bottom, it's not flickering like that for me, but the bottom is in defrost. So you got to take it out of defrost, hold the defrost top left button, boom, okay? And now we're just going to watch the box come down to temp, and hopefully it doesn't shut off. So here's the deal. If it's a normal customer of mine and I'm the only person servicing the location, then I do not cut the ends off. I leave them on because it's just a company policy of mine for the safety of my guys. There's no sense in pinching that off. We're the only people working here. If it was a new customer, but I don't do work for new customers. I'm only servicing my existing customers right now. But if it was a new customer and it was under warranty, I might consider welding them shut, but I'm not going to. So we're just about down to temp. And that is going to be it. I'm going to turn on my electronic leak detector and do a last leak search across the whole box just to make sure everything is good. And then we're going to give this one back to the customer. And that is it. All right, when you're working with R-290, the most important thing to remember is stay calm and just follow proper practices, okay? If you go back to basic refrigeration fundamentals, when you're trained in trade school, and I'm talking for the last 50 years, you're trained to purge the system with nitrogen. You're trained to braze while flowing nitrogen. Now, I know there's a good majority of people that forgot how to do that stuff, okay? Believe it or not, you're actually trained to pull an evacuation too, down to submicron levels, 500, 200, something like that. But so many people forgot about it. They forgot to train on that stuff, okay? I have a book back here. Review of Vacuum for Service Engineers. This was recently revised by Brian Orr and Jim Bergman. This was copyrighted in 1959. Jim Bergman and Brian Orr simply revised this book. They went through and they updated it. But the core foundation of the book, and I just realized that it's ripped, but the core foundation of the book and what's in it is talking about the ways that we're supposed to be pulling a vacuum. I mean, they're talking about using non-digital micron gauges and, I'm sorry, that's a leak detector, but they're talking about using non-digital micron gauges in here, and they're explaining the whole evacuation process. This isn't new. This is old stuff. 1959 is when they're talking about evacuation, okay? The same principles about brazing with nitrogen, all that stuff, okay? We've forgotten how to do that. But it's not like it wasn't always the way you were supposed to do things, because it is. Go back and look at RCS training resources or old carrier manuals or train manuals or anything, and they're going to talk about pulling a proper evacuation. They're going to talk about purging with nitrogen. They're going to talk about pressure testing with nitrogen, sweeping the system with nitrogen, okay? If you follow basic refrigeration practices, you can work on R-290. R-290 is an A3. That is a completely flammable refrigerant. It's pure unodorized propane, okay? The people that are afraid, and I've seen comments in social media and different places about A2Ls. A2Ls are mildly flammable. They have a flammable component added to the refrigerant, okay? Nothing to be scared of. But people are freaking out and losing their minds because A2Ls are coming to the air conditioning industry. We've been working with propane for a long time. Now, propane was a refrigerant that was used ages and ages ago, and in other countries they've been using propane for a while too, okay? It's nothing to be afraid of. There's inherent risks in our job that we do. You know, we might fall off a roof when we're walking or going up an extension ladder. You might get into a car accident when you're driving down the road. Guess what? When you're driving down the road, you're sitting on a 25 to 30 gallon fuel tank of gasoline, and it's right underneath you as you're driving down the road. I'm sure that when the first combustion, automobile that was using gasoline in it, everybody was probably afraid too. Oh my gosh, that thing's going to just explode. There's so many people that are afraid of working on R-290, afraid of working on A2Ls. Guys, relax. It's not that big of a deal, okay? Again, though, you just have to follow proper practices, okay? There is risks to this job. You can get electrocuted. You can get hurt using power tools and different things. So it's just a thing that you have to put in your head to be safe if you follow basic practices, okay? I didn't show it in the video, but of course, have a fire extinguisher nearby. Hey, that doesn't change whether you're working on a flammable refrigerant or a regular refrigerant. Anytime you're brazing, right, you should have a fire extinguisher nearby. Have something to extinguish a fire. If you don't necessarily want to discharge a fire extinguisher, I keep a spray bottle or a wet towel. Those are all good things to have, because sometimes when you're brazing, even on non-flammable refrigerants, the oil can combust, right? And then you have a little flame out or something like that, okay? Another thing to talk about is you have to be practical. I realize that if you read training resources, in a perfect world, I should have cut that dryer out. I should have cut the pressure control out, okay? But it's inevitable that you're gonna have to learn how to work on things. In a perfect world, you should never open up anything that has live electricity in it. Nothing, okay? I'm talking even a thermostat with 24 volts. Technically, you shouldn't open that up, okay? But we all know that the trade that we're in, we have to learn how to work on this stuff and still have it operating and be functional, okay? So we have to work in live electrical panels. We have to open up air conditioners that have moving parts that can cut our fingers off if we stick them in them. But you have to have common sense when you're working, right? So don't be afraid of this stuff. Just be careful, just like you would be if you were doing anything else. Okay, so we follow proper practices. We purge the system with nitrogen to help to ensure that we don't have any combustion happening when we're brazing the system, or I'm sorry, any flammable vapors igniting, I guess, ignition, whatever you want to call it. But it's really not that big of a deal, okay? I highly suggest that you only use OEM parts when you are working with R-290. It's very important because you don't want to be blamed for anything. There is special components on a majority of the manufacturers. They use spark-proof components, spark-proof condenser fan motors, different things like that. Now, I am starting to see an influx of refrigerations, like self-contained refrigerators. I've heard about them. I personally haven't experienced them, that are no longer using spark-proof components. I don't know about that one, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not a huge fan of venting the refrigerant. It still feels dirty, right? Even though it's R-290 and you're allowed to do it. Still don't like doing that, but sometimes you have to, okay? In that particular situation, I guess if you wanted to, you could probably take a vacuum down recovery cylinder and pull the R-290 into that and then maybe vent that outside. I can't see any problems with that, really. You would just have to make sure that under no circumstances there's any sort of a spark or anything like that. That's a good question. Can you safely do that? I don't think there's any problems with pulling a vacuum. And yeah, I don't think there is. Yeah, I think you could just put it into a vacuum down cylinder. But at this point in time, in the light commercial refrigeration side, I have not heard of a combustible gas recovery machine. I have not heard of one yet, but almost all manufacturers are making A2L compliant vacuum pumps and recovery machines, but just not for A3 refrigerants, which is what R-290 is, okay? The two A3 refrigerants that we deal with is isobutane and propane, essentially, or R-290, okay? Isobutane, I'm trying to remember the designation, the ASHRAE number. I don't remember what it is, but anyways, you guys I'm sure can figure it out, or the guys that do domestic appliances, residential stuff, you guys deal with isobutane all the time. Just not something that I deal with. I deal with R-290, but really wouldn't be anything different. There is specialized components. You do have to get a specialized scale because you want it to be able to go down into the minute increments that they have to use for these refrigerators, grams essentially, 150 grams. Now some of the other scales, the numbers, they jump too high. Like when it's in the grams, it'll go like, there's one scale I think that I had, and maybe it's the Field Piece one or something, and it jumps like every 10 grams or every 20 grams or something like that. And it's a little bit difficult to dial in a charge 100%. So I like these R-290 scales. Again, this one was from JB. I said the model number, whatever it is in there. I got no affiliation with them, but it's kind of nice because the refrigerant cylinder screws right onto the scale. And the particular refrigerant that I use, you can pull the tank off and it resets itself. So it has a valve essentially inside of it on the ones that I deal with. Now, don't make assumptions. You need to understand the R-290 that you're buying and make sure that when you pull it off the scale that it's actually going to seal and not just blast the remaining R-290 out of the system or out of the tank, you know, because you don't want that to happen. But that's pretty much it. There's not really too much to these, okay? You just need to make sure that you're careful. You need to make sure that you're following proper practices. It's basically a regular refrigerator repair, and I was just purging with nitrogen as I was doing everything, which you should be theoretically doing that on, normal systems too. Now, one really important thing is, as I was purging nitrogen through the system, and then I did a sweep before, and then I purged as I was brazing, you have to have those solenoid magnets on there, because if you don't have the solenoid magnets on, those solenoids, they close on this particular system, okay? So they close down because the spring that's in there that shoves the valve shut when it doesn't have power. So if I tried to purge with nitrogen, it wouldn't go anywhere. It would just deadhead into the solenoid valve and stop. Okay, so we had to open it with those solenoid magnets. So those Sporlan magnets that I have, those things are perfect, man. Just throw those on there and you're good to go, okay? I really do appreciate you making it to the end of the video. Please consider checking out my website, hvacrvideos.com. Hats, merchandise, all that good stuff available. Stay tuned. I just placed an order for some other hats. I'm ordering a dad hat, which is a different style. You guys will see. I'll put social media clips out there, but it's a different style hat, more of a slouched, relaxed fit. And then I also got a flat brim flex fit hat. That's actually a snapback coming too. Looks just the same. It's not the same material as these hats, but they'll be available soon. Please consider subscribing to the channel. It would definitely help me, okay? If you're interested in supporting the channel, the easiest way to do so is watch the videos from beginning to end. That's as easy as it is. There's other ways to support the channel too. If you're interested, go to TrueTechTools.com. If you find any tools that you feel the need to purchase, if you use my offer code BIGPICTURE, you can get an 8% discount on checkout. Now that applies to almost all the items on their website. There's a few things that discount doesn't apply to, so keep that in mind. But when you use my offer code BIGPICTURE, again, one word, I get a small commission from that. You get an 8% discount. I get a small commission. It's just a great way to help support the channel. There's links in the show notes of this video for PayPal, Patreon, or YouTube channel memberships, which are different ways to donate to the channel. And I think that might be it. I really, really appreciate you guys, and we will catch you on the next one, okay?